Tennessee's got some really good head coaches, but two in particular took over programs that were in the dust and has turned that dust into gold, at least in one of these sports I'm talking about. How Tony Vitello and Josh Heupel changed the narrative of Tennessee baseball and football, that and more. It's your Friday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I am Eric Kane. Happy to have you guys along for the ride, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Shout out everydayers. And you can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, download us all for free wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel. Got a fun Friday show to get into today, but first, shout out to Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and when you download the Game Time app. Josh Heupel and Tony Vitello, what has made them so successful at Tennessee when really the programs that they inherited were so far down in the dumps it wasn't even funny? That's coming up in a matter of just a couple of seconds. Defense is going to lead the way for Tennessee in 2024 when, or maybe not lead the way, but it's going to be make or break in terms of Tennessee wants to make the college football playoff. That coming from a national storyline on a Thursday. That's coming up in segment 2. And then we'll get you set for Tennessee and Vanderbilt in the SEC baseball series. And a clip I'm going to play from my co-host on the porch, former Tennessee first baseman Luke Lipsius. It's really, really funny, and you are not going to want to miss that. So all that and more coming up here today on a Friday show. So it was a question asked, and I was absent because I was at the beach there after the Florida series. I stayed down in Florida. I went to the beach for a couple of days before coming back, and I was absent on the VolQuest Mailbag podcast this week. But here's one of the questions that was submitted, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I wanted to bring it on here to the show. Tony V and Josh Heupel both inherited rosters and teams who weren't ready to win championships when they arrived. They both flipped that script seemingly in a couple of seasons. They are polar opposites, or so it seems that they are. What differences and similarities do they have that makes them both so successful? Really, really good question. And when you sit down and think about it and kind of look at the wording of this question, they both flip that. They are both polar opposites, or so it seems, and that is spot on. Tony Vitello is outgoing. Tony Vitello likes to talk. Tony Vitello likes to cut up and chit-chat and different types of things in front of a camera and a microphone and all that. He's not afraid to say or to reveal an awful lot. He's protected in some areas, as every head coach is, but Josh Heupel's completely opposite in that regard. Not that Josh Heupel's mean or rude or anything, and Josh Heupel's really got a great sense of humor and everything. He's just so guarded. And he's so protected almost that he just doesn't want to say anything. In fact, the running joke on Thursdays during football season, during those press conferences is, can I get him to say anything today? Because it is 5 or 6 minutes of absolutely just coach talk. It's nothing. And then he'll even laugh when he's walking off and say, good luck, guys. And again, it's just kind of part of it. It's frustrating for guys like us at times, but it's not like a deal breaker or anything. It just kind of is who Josh Heupel is. But that doesn't mean that he's rude or he's not a cool person or anything like that. I'm not saying that I don't think anybody in the media has a relationship where they can go and hang out with them at all, but two very different guys. But, of course we know about Tennessee football, where it was, cloud looming over the program, NCAA violations, 17 level 1 infractions, all that and more. 2 and whatever that record was, and 2-8 was that in 2020 when they won the first 2 games, or 3-7, 3-7 in 2020, won the first 2 games, went on a 7-game losing streak, and they beat Vanderbilt at the end of the season. Just not great, kind of where you were. And then you look at Tennessee baseball, and Tony Vitello was hired in July of 2017. So his first season was in 2018. That 2017, the last season with Dave Serrano, 27-25 the overall record, but 7-21 in SEC play. It had been 14 years, dating back to the College World Series team of 2005, 14 years since Tennessee had an above 500 record in conference play. That's truly hard to even fathom, to be completely honest with you. It's just wild to even think about. And Tennessee hadn't been back to the postseason since that World Series team where they placed 8th of 8 teams in '05, and they didn't get back into the postseason play until 2019 in regional play. They went and bowed out in the Chapel Hill Regional. But of course, we know that Tony Vitello has taken Tennessee to the College World Series in 2021, this past year in 2023, and of course to the Supers when hosting in 2022, that historic season. So Tony Vitello's had so much success in such a short amount of time, if you will. Now, it's more than what, Josh Heupel's been here in Knoxville, but Tony Vitello's had some real, success, championships, SEC East, if you want to even call that a championship, but SEC regular season outright champion, SEC tournament champions. That was back in 2022. Tennessee has done an awful lot. Of course, the 2 World Series, hosting regionals, hosting supers. There's been a lot of wins and everything. But even when you look at Josh Heupel, he took that team that was 3-7 in 2020, and then you flipped it to a 7-5 regular season team where you're a top 10 offense in 2021. And yeah, I mean, you weren't winning championships. You were bowl eligible. You lost in the Music City Bowl, but you had a fun, exciting, engaging brand of football and something you can build on and really put Tennessee back on the map. And of course, we all know about the 2022 season where Tennessee had a 10-2 regular season, Orange Bowl champions, all that and more. Had a shot of getting a Heisman finalist and debuted in the college football playoff rankings that season at number 1. Of course, didn't make it because you had a loss to Georgia and then the terrible loss to South Carolina. But that was a really, really good season. And then even you took a step back and you finished 8-4. 9-4 with a win in the Citrus Bowl, and that's considered a down year. So when you look at both these programs, and I mean, of course, Rick Barnes is doing what Rick Barnes is doing, and what he inherited wasn't great in the situation and all that. I'm really talking about baseball and football here from the Question Over the VolQuest podcast. But what these 2 coaches have done in a short amount of time has just been truly incredible. Now, what makes them so successful? Well, let's start with football. Josh Heupel surrounded himself with a good staff, in my opinion. Familiarity, of course, with Joey Halsley and Glenn Ellerby and some of the guys that he's been coaching with for a long time. He, on his initial staff, he had a former head coach at the college level in Jerry Mack. I think that was really, he was the outsider, but I think that was a really, really good addition. And of course, Jerry Mack has left and has gone on to coach in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Rodney Garner on the defensive line was hired before Tim Banks was to be the defensive coordinator here. Willie Martinez, there was a lot of familiarity there with their time at UCF. And of course, Martinez and his coaching pedigree in the SEC. So he surrounded himself with a really, really good staff. Also, the scheme. It's not all scheme. That's what I'm trying to say here, but it is a niche. It is unique. It sets them apart. And even though teams have beaten Tennessee before, you still get punched in the mouth in the first quarter of every single game because of this scheme. And it's been really, really good. There have been constant improvements on defense, and we'll get into more of that here in segment number 2 when we talk about defense being the difference in Tennessee making the college football playoff in 2024 or not. But also for football, you had a quarterback. And if you have a quarterback, it accelerates, that progression, if you will. And Hendon Hooker accelerated that progression, and it all just kind of worked out well. He's recruited not elitely, but he's recruited well since being here at Tennessee, surrounding himself with a good staff, and he has a good system. And I think he's a great developer, and his staff is as well. I mean, look at some of the examples across the board. But I think Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley are really good at developing quarterbacks. And I think Josh Heupel's a pretty good play caller when it's all said and done. So those are kind of why he's turned things around in such a short amount of time. Tony Vitello, same can be said, man. The staff that he surrounded himself with, Josh Elander has turned into one of the best assistant coaches in the country, associate head coaches in the country. He will have a head coaching job here soon. Frank Anderson is highly regarded as one of the better pitching coaches in all the country. In fact, if you were to look at Tennessee's athletic staffs across the board here on the University of Tennessee, Frank Anderson might be the most valuable assistant coach of any program here at Tennessee. And I mean, the results speak for themselves. Development, being able to develop players and carve out a niche and be who you're going to be. And also, where Josh Heupel is recruited well, Tony Vitello has been an elite recruiter here at Tennessee, both in the high school ranks and keeping some of those guys here on campus when they've been drafted, okay, already signed here with Tennessee, holding them on campus instead of going and signing with a professional ball club. And, via the transfer portal, look at some of the big impacts Tennessee had last year. Tennessee was a World Series team last year. Maui Ahuna was your starting shortstop. Griffin Merritt was your designated hitter and had huge moments in that game. Chase Dolander coming over in the role he played for 2022 and 2023. This season, look at Billy Amick, and so on and so forth. So, look at A.J. Causey. Recruiting elite from high school, transfer portal as well. So they share a lot of the similarities in terms of being good at who they are, surrounding themselves with good staffs, and developing that talent once they're here on campus. They are very different in many ways, but they are working, and the results speak for themselves. And if you're a Tennessee fan, you've been really, really happy, pleased, and been on for a heck of a ride since both those guys have been here on campus. So wanted to kind of talk about that here on the podcast. I thought it was really, really interesting. So shout out to the poster over at VolQuest.com and giving me some free material over here. But really, really good question. I thought it was kind of fun. Wanted to bring it on the show here. Hey, when we come back, defense is going to be the difference in Tennessee making the college football playoff and not in 2024. I'll tell you why. More on that in a moment as we continue on with the Friday Locked On Vols. I want to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the app to where you can buy tickets for your next event, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a concert, whether it's comedy, whatever theater, whatever event is in your area. You can buy tickets to that event with the Game Time app. And it is the app to where it's for the procrastinators like you and myself as well. Maybe you, but myself for sure. The tickets get cheaper leading up to the event, and they've got this thing called the lowest price guarantee where Game Time's going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket somewhere else in the one in the same section than the one that the Game Time app is offering you. Zone deals, all-in prices, flash deals. You can get views of your seats so you can see exactly what you're paying for, all in the safe, secure, easy-to-use app with flexible customer service. One of the best in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guarantee. More of your Friday edition of Locked On Vols coming up next. All right, so there's a story over at On3, the network, and it's a story from Jesse Simonton. Of course, we brought one of his articles onto the show, I believe it was yesterday, talking about the wide receiver unit rankings and how I disagree with that. But here's an article from Jesse Simonton that I saw when preparing for the show that I wanted to bring on here that I thought was really interesting. You can go check out the full article over at on3.com. And the headline, Nico Iamaleava garners the attention, but Tennessee's defense will determine college football playoff hopes in 2024. And it got me. I was like, the more I look at that first glance, I'm like, okay, true. Nico's getting all the hype, former number one overall player in the country, 5-star quarterback, of course, the NIL rumors and all that, and of course him being the center of the NCAA probe and whatnot. But he gets all the headlines about being the next Hendon Hooker or kind of bridging that gap to greatness and all that. And deservingly so. I think he's going to be a really, really good quarterback. He only has one start under his belt, though. He's going to go through some lumps. He's going to go through some growing pains, just as every young quarterback does. Remember, he's just going to be a sophomore next year, or technically a redshirt freshman. But Nico's going to play a big role in it. I think Nico, with Nico, the offensive ceiling is so much higher. I think he's got tons of weapons at his disposal out of the wide receiver. As we spoke on yesterday's show, I think Tennessee's got one of the deeper wide receiver groups in the nation. I think offensive line, though there's some question about depth and exactly who's going to start at left guard, I like the offensive line that you're going to run out there. Veterans, guys who have played in this system. Lance Hurd, one of the best offensive tackle prospects from the transfer portal. He's now part of your program. I like the options at running back. Need to get healthy, but I like the options at running back. My point is, I like the offense, and I think the offense is going to get back into being a top 10 offense and looking more like the 2022 version of Tennessee compared to the 2023 version. But as Jesse Simonton points out here in his article, the offense and Nico are going to get all the hype and the storylines, but what comes to making the college football playoff, that is probably going to hinge on Tennessee's defense and Tim Banks. Tim Banks, as I spoke on yesterday's show when we did the assistant coaches rankings, this defense has gotten better and better and better all 3 years that Tim Banks has coordinated this unit. Finished number 2 in the SEC in yards per play allowed at just under 5, number 3 in scoring in the SEC per the defense. They had 41 sacks, which was second in the SEC last year. They had Tennessee was much improved on a down-to-down basis. Success rate went from 88th nationally to 40th last year, all while maintaining a hyper-aggressive style of 101 tackles for loss, the second most takeaways in the Southeastern Conference. You could even make the argument, as Jesse does here, and I saw this on the Bulk West message board as well over in the general's quarters, that it was the defense that was leading the way for Tennessee in the 9-4 season last year. Not the offense. It was the defense, all the TFLs, all the sacks. It was James Pierce. It was the defense that was that steadying flow for when the offense was so up and down and when the offense was so point deficient at times. So what about this year? Well, this year, of course, you bring back James Pierce. And I always talk about it, and I compare recruiting to building an NFL roster. You got to have a quarterback, and you got to have a guy to get after the quarterback. Tennessee's got Nico. Tennessee's got James Pierce, 2 really strong pillars to kind of hold your program up. And that's a good thing entering the season. So you have that, of course. You have a retooled secondary that I think is going to be really interesting. That's obviously the biggest question mark about this program. Tennessee's got 5 new starters in the defensive secondary, and they lost a whole lot of more guys that played. A couple of safeties that have played a ton of football. Jalen McCullough has played safety for this team since Heupel has been here, pretty much almost every snap. Wesley Walker was an experienced guy. He's gone. Of course, Trayvon Flowers has been gone for a little bit, but Gabe Jeudy-Lally, Danico Slaughter, Kamal Haddon, all those corners are gone. Tamarian McDonald, your starting nickelback, your star, he's gone. So retooling that secondary, we think it'll be Andre Turrentine and Jacoby Thomas coming up from MTSU to man the safety spots. A healthy Jordan Thomas will likely start at nickel at the star position. And then you have a combination of Ricky Gibson, Jamal McCoy, and Jalen McMurray at corners. It's a starting point. You need some more depth. You need John Slaughter to be up there and play a little bit. You need Caleb Beasley and Jordan Matthews to come around at cornerback. You need Boo Carter to come on and be a guy that can play either safety or the nickelback spot or the star position. And part of that was kind of getting introduced in spring practice, and that will carry over into fall camp. But the biggest question mark about this team is the retooled secondary. And so many fans want to say, well, I don't care, just start fresh, and that's fine. But remember, this defense, secondary included, took a step forward after year 1, from year 1 to year 2, took a step forward year 2 to year 3, and they just continue to get better and better and better. So my big question is the secondary, but if you have a strong unit up front, it's only going to improve and help your secondary, or it can just help cover some warts. If you have a defensive line that is constantly putting pressure on the quarterback with a 4-man front, you do not have to bring a blitzer from the second or the third layer, meaning you can play more zone defense in the back end, meaning you can have help over the top. If you're throwing to a third of the field, you can have help over the top with that cornerback coming in. You throw to the middle of the field, you got 2 high safeties or a dropping linebacker deep to combat with the safety. Point is, if you have a defensive line that can put pressure on the quarterback, it's only going to help out the back end. And not only can Tennessee put pressure on the quarterback with James Pierce, as I mentioned, and returners in the interior, such as Omar Norman Lott, who had 5 sacks, and Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, who might be the most NFL-ready guy after his enormous spring practice he just had, that being Bryson Eason. Elijah Simmons, who's a big-body guy, of course, former 5-star, and David Hobbs. Those are your interior options. Jackson Moy coming over from Stanford in the transfer portal. You also have some guys that you like that hadn't played an awful lot, but you really, really like in Tyree West, Tyree Weathersby, guys like Dominic Bailey who have played, and then Jason Jenkins, who's going to get his turn in the mix as well. Not only James Pierce, but you got Joshua Josephs, who's seen a ton of time, and Caleb Herring, who has a high upside at the Leo spot. My point is, I just named about 20 names, literally. That's all the defensive line. So having a great defensive line, and Tim Banks called, we expect to be the best defensive line in the nation to help cover some warts in the back end, you're going to be okay, in my opinion. And then you got the middle, you got the linebackers in the middle. Keeping Keenan Peely healthy and upright is going to be critical. And we think that he can do that this year, but of course we won't know until we see it. But you're also got guys with high upsides like Arian Carter, Jeremiah Thielander. Edwin Spillman, I think, is going to be a player for sure. Caleb Perry's an experienced guy in this system, now a third-year guy. Tennessee's just deeper and better in the front seven, in my opinion, than they ever have been here at Tennessee under this system. The back end's going to be a work in progress, but we know Tennessee's offense is going to be fun, going back to scoring points and all that, but it's the defense, the improvements in the red zone, which it improved significantly from year 2 to year 3, improvements in the red zone, getting after the quarterback, tackles for loss, sacks, all that's always been there. But if you can improve on third downs, the defense might be the difference in getting Tennessee into the college football playoff. Tennessee's hair on fire style has exposed them to getting gashed when the pass rush doesn't get home. This is from Simonton's article, especially on third downs. Last season, the Vols finished 12th in third down defense, 42.7% against SEC opponents. Tennessee couldn't get off the field against Florida, who converted on 50% of the third downs, Missouri, who converted on 65% of third downs, or Georgia, who converted on 69% of third downs, which is a major reason why they lost all 3 games. Yeah, that's got to improve for sure. So red zone's gotten better. Pressure's always been there. If you can improve on third downs, then this defense has what it takes, in my opinion, to pull off some of those wins and get into the college football playoff. So I would agree with Jesse Thompson over at On 3. The offense and Nico Iamaleava getting all the headlines, but the defense could be the difference this year if Tennessee wants to make the expanded 12-team college football playoff. Good stuff over there from Jesse Simonton. More to come. We'll get you set for another critical SEC series, rivalry series, Tennessee at Vanderbilt. That is coming up next as we continue on. And plus, we have a clip that you're going to want to hear from Luke Lipsius. That and more as we conclude a Friday edition of Locked On Vols. Okay, guys, got to tell you about our friends over at Monopoly Go. Timeout, hit pause. Got to tell you about our friends Monopoly Go. It's the new mobile hit twist on the classic game of Monopoly. I know what you're saying. You've already talked about that, but there's just so much stuff that I gotta make mention. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes that you can unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers that you can trade with friends to compete. Complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing places to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you want to smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. You can include your own unique mini games, digging for treasure, and so much more. There's always new time events that help you win big, like massive multiplayers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench. Go download it for free today on the Google Play Store and App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Tennessee and Vanderbilt. A rivalry is renewed. I said this last week going into the Florida series, and that was true. What also is true about Tennessee and Vanderbilt this weekend is the Commodores are desperate for some wins. Big time desperate for some wins. You look at Vanderbilt's schedule right now, they are, here we go, 33-16, which seems pretty solid, overall record, right? Well, they're 11-13 in conference play. In the SEC in the regular season, you need to get to 14 wins to feel good, to feel like you've made a regional. That means Vanderbilt's 3 wins away. 6 games left in the regular season before the SEC tournament, so they've got chances here. But they're in desperation mode. They need some more wins, just like Florida did last weekend. Tennessee's number 1 in all 5 major polls coming into this weekend's play. Vanderbilt is not ranked. I don't think anybody would have batted an eye if I said that Tennessee would be ranked number 1 in preseason if we had this conversation by the time of this series. But I think people would be surprised to know that Vanderbilt has not been ranked heading into the weekend. What you do need to know is Vanderbilt is really good at home. 26-6 on the season are the Commodores at home, whereas away, they're only 3-10. So Vanderbilt's been really, really solid at home on the season, but they've been a bit of a losing streak here lately in SEC play. They were swept by Georgia last weekend. They lost 2 of 3 at Mississippi State, so they've lost 5 straight SEC games. They've lost 1, 2, They've lost 2 series in a row, but 3 of their last 4 series they've dropped in SEC play. They've got injuries all over the place, more so than probably any team, maybe in the country, but in the SEC. It's a part of the game, but they've had a ton of injuries. Pitching-wise, a high ERA at a 4.83, which is very, very high for Vanderbilt. They've struck out 483 opposing batters, which is 6th best in the SEC. They've allowed the 8th most runs at 262. Very middle of the road in terms of pitching this year for Vanderbilt. Bryce Cunningham's going to start on Friday. Carter Holden's going to start on Saturday. They've been the 2 constants for Vanderbilt. In fact, they've both logged over 60 innings on the season. Nobody else on the Vanderbilt staff has even logged 40 innings on the mound, which I think is really, really interesting. We'll see who starts in Game 3. It could be Devin Futrell, who's got a lot of experience in this league. J.D. Thompson has got a lot of experience. Grayson Carter actually started opening day for Vanderbilt. But pitching's, especially Game 3, is a big-time question mark for Vanderbilt right now. On the offense as well, a little all over the board. They do a couple things well and then a lot of things bad. Excuse me. The average, 6th best in the conference at 285, which is fine. They hit a whole lot of extra base hits, including 104 doubles, 10 triples, tied for 2nd and 3rd in the conference. But they've logged the 2nd fewest home runs at 55. Tennessee has hit about 127. Tennessee's 2nd in the country, 1st in the SEC. Vanderbilt's hit only 55. So they hit a lot of extra base hits, but they don't hit a lot of home runs. They got the 5th worst slugging percentage, the 3rd worst on base percentage. They scored the 9th most runs. So they do doubles and triples well. Average is okay, but everything else offensively is not very good for Vanderbilt. They do have 4 players in the everyday lineup that are hitting over 300 this season. However, Jaden Davis, he was hit in the face back on April 27th against Mississippi State. He didn't play the Game 3 of that series, didn't play at all last weekend, so we'll see if he can return. Vanderbilt needs him for sure, but hope he's okay anyway. He had to have surgery on his face, essentially. But Jaden Davis, he's hitting 319 on the season, leading Vanderbilt's hitters in the categories. We'll see if he is going to make a comeback this weekend in that lineup. Got Jonathan Vastain that's really, really good defensively. Shortstop, he hits the lead off. R.J. Austin hitting 311, driven in a team-high 42 runs, scored a team-high 42 runs, 21 steals, driven in a team-high 48 runs. Matthew Polk has a good average. Alan Espanol has a 298 average, but a team-best 9 home runs. That's another thing. None of Vanderbilt's hitters are into double digits in home runs, so it goes to show you how few home runs that this team hits. One thing Vanderbilt does do is run very, very well. Vanderbilt has stolen 88. Let's see here. I have it written down somewhere. Vanderbilt has stolen 88 bases on 95 attempts this year. 4 guys are in double figures, and again, as I mentioned, R.J. Austin has 21 steals on the season. So managing the run game is going to be very, very important for Tennessee this year, or this weekend for sure. But it is a rivalry game. This series means so much to Tennessee fans and Tennessee players. Here's what former Tennessee first baseman Luke Lipsius had to say about Vanderbilt and Tim Corbin. Give this a listen.
Corbin sucks. I used to think so highly of him when I was younger, because that was, when Vandy was going to World Series, it was like, these guys are the dudes. But then you play against him, you hear stories of these guys playing for him, and you're like, that place literally would stink to play at. He runs it like a military camp, which for discipline is fine, but as far as for having fun in college, not fine. And then you see now where there's this NIL pool that evens out the playing field, because Vandy now can't just pay full ride scholarships and get all the good talent, because other SEC schools are gonna pay them just as much, if not more. And so I think it's just one of those things where I'm very happy that Vandy is not that good, and that I really want to see us beat them by a lot.
So Luke Lipsius, right off the top, man, he's dropping the hammer, and Tim Corbin sucks, and I think that he's not alone in thinking that. I think a lot of people, not just on the Tennessee side, but really across college baseball, might have that same feeling. But he's a good manager. He's a good coach, and Vanderbilt's been successful for so long. But Luke had a really good point about NIL and how the playing field's kind of even a little bit for teams like Tennessee going up against Vanderbilt in that private university. Should be a good one. It's not a top 25 matchup, but Tennessee is ranked number 1 on the road again. It's never easy to win on the road in SEC play. Again, Vanderbilt is 3-10 on the road, but 26-6 at home. So that's something to pay attention to, and we'll see what happens. Tennessee's won 7 straight SEC series and looking for their 8th here this weekend in the Mid-State. One other note as we're out the door, AJ Russell, we will see if he's on the active roster at the time of this recording. I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't gotten word if he'll be on the active roster. But my assumption would be that he would be, just to have that option. Doesn't mean he'll pitch. He's certainly not going to start this weekend. But that just goes to show you that AJ Russell's close. One person told me around the program that he is, quote, close through another successful bullpen on Tuesday, and it wouldn't shock me at all if he were to maybe open the final midweek game of the season, or maybe open a game, that Wednesday game at Hoover, just to kind of ease him back into competition. He's not going to pitch 7 innings, go 100-plus pitches again this year. He will be used in short stints, maybe closing, middle relief, maybe to open games, kind of whatever Tennessee needs from him. But man, again, what a September call-up essentially is what this is going to be. And barring a late setback, AJ Russell is close to returning. We'll see if it's this weekend. Again, at the time of this recording, I'm not sure if it will be. But AJ Russell is close, and that is huge for the number 1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll come back on Monday. We'll tell you all about Tennessee and Vanderbilt and the latest in the world of college football, specifically Tennessee. As always, appreciate you guys. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe. This is Locked On Vols.